Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Visor, episode number 4 of series number 2. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the previous episodes of the series we have had. This is the second series, of course. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, well, watch this one first and then go back and watch series 1 and 2. They are in the description if you want to go and watch those ones. Please do, because they are very, very interesting to watch. But this evening, joining me for episode number 4 is a man, if you're in the F1 community, you will definitely know very, very well. His name is David, or otherwise known as CRL Rosberg. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, so let's hope that we can have a nice chat today. Let's just have a bit of fun here.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. If you haven't watched one of these episodes before, guys, what we do is we sit down with some of the guys in the F1 community and just get to know them a bit better than we do from just seeing a little Twitter handle and some tweets now and again. So this evening, David's joining me, which I'm very much looking forward to talking to him. So let's start with, of course, we'll talk about Formula One. I mean, where did it all start for you? Let's talk about league racing first. Where did it all start? Let's go back to the very beginning of your league racing career.
Right. I guess it kind of links in with how I got into F1. I got into F1 by playing the F1 games, really, because at first I was more of a bikes fan, and then my brother bought the F1 2010, and I got hooked after that by watching him play, and then I got my own game. I never watched F1 until 2012. I was a bit of an on and off fan. I watched some of the first half, and I watched the final in Brazil. And I guess for league racing, I had learned about competitive racing at the end of F1 2013, I think, through FizzyFan when he was uploading his full race highlights. And at the start of 2014, I got approached by, I guess, a controversial figure at this point to some people, from a person that now known as STB Maldi. I joined the league at the time. I must have been 13 at that point. And at first, it was just as a complete laugh. I didn't really understand I didn't understand setups as a whole. I didn't really understand anything about actual competitive racing. But after that, it was quite fun. It got very competitive between myself and a couple of others, but overall it's just good fun. I hung around there that was mainly the league I played. I did on F1 2014, which in all fairness, it wasn't exactly a great game, but I was competing with times, because this was like my first game of competitive racing, and I was doing very similar times, maybe a little bit slower, at times quicker than Tyrrell Limitless and Tyrrell Martin. Which I learned after, into the next year or so. I was quite gassed because ever since then I think I've gone downhill. So that's kind of where it started, and then getting into the top league of AOR has been quite fun at that point.
Well, I followed you for a while now, and of course you're racing in Tier 1. Now you're in Tier 2 this season in AOR, and I mean you've been pretty quick, but I mean on the pad, of course, which I'm guessing. Do you feel that has limited you with how far you can go in the F1 games? I mean, you've been able to keep up with the top boys, but do you think now as the game's developing, you are struggling? I know you recently got a wheel courtesy of Neil and Bailey, or VRT Verstappen. Do you feel that now you've got that wheel that you can really progress in the esports scene?
100%. I think, like, as if the pad has hindered me a lot, definitely. I think 2014 it was obviously like the biggest pad game that like anyone has ever seen, which was probably why I was competing with guys like Martin and Tyrrell Limitless, because they were on the pad as well, so they were a good gauge to base myself on. 2015 was more a bit of a wheel game, but I think that was more of a Brendan Lee game more than anything, because he was rapid as anything on that game. It was unbelievable. 2016 was a lot more even, but again, I think since 2016, really, it's become because they used to be quite even, the pad and the wheel. Obviously, in AOR, it doesn't really show that, because the only pad champions have been, well, Brosiek and Tyrrell Martin, and they were on F1 2013 and F1 2014, there have been no recent really pad competitors at the very top. Of course, you've had JD was there for a time, Martin, Surprise, all these guys that they couldn't quite beat the top wheel users like Evo and Flying Finn. So I've also struggled to get to grips with like having the need to get a wheel, because it wasn't something I really wanted to do. I don't have the money for it, nor do I really have the space. I still don't. But thankfully, Neil and Bailey were very generous to give me their wheel, which I'm very thankful for. And like it's like when I said I feel like I've gone backwards in league racings, because the wheel has the gap to the pad and the wheel has gotten a lot bigger. So like what's good for a pad time is maybe half a second to a second slower than what the wheel users can do.
Oh wow!
Which it's a bit disheartening, but
Of
at
course.
the same time, like what Codemasters are trying to do is build more of a sim. Obviously, F1 drivers don't race on a pad, so it makes sense that the wheel should be quicker. But I would like to see if they were a little bit more closer. It does fully make sense if they're going to go more in the direction of trying to build the F1 franchise into more of a sim, and for the pad drivers to have a bit more of like an easier feel for it. But in terms of league racing, it's obviously going to be frustrating because, you know, a good wheel can be very expensive, and not everyone has that luxury. So, for a top pad user like Martin was, like Surprise, Cyril Hamilton at the time, myself, it can be quite annoying when you're getting the most out of the pad and it's just not enough. But I think I fully understand why it's like that. And with Neil and Bailey sending me their wheel, I definitely need to get my setup sorted first, because I don't have the space for it at the moment.
Yeah.
But as soon as I get that sorted, I'm gonna switch to the wheel full time, and hopefully I can get to F1 in the next or F1 into the next season. So that's the plan. It's going to take a while, since it's going to take a while to get the setup sorted first. But I plan to use the wheel a lot more, so that's the plan at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, getting that wheel now, it will really help you move forward with your ability on the F1 games. But you mentioned how Codemasters have now changed towards going towards a sim. Do you think that will really hamper the casual fan that usually uses the pad?
I don't think it will, because of course, Codemasters they should look into building more of a sim, because of course esports is becoming a massive thing now. From 2017 to 2018, it's only going to get hopefully bigger and better into 2019, and it makes sense for them to want to build F1 into more of a simulator. But I think for the casual fan, they've still done a great job with career mode and just how the game feels on the pad itself. It's still really good. So I think for the casual fan, if it kind of stays like the way it is, they should be all right. So as long as they don't do anything drastic to the way the pad feels, then I think the casual fan should be fine, because I think casual fans, they would use assists or something. Some would use no assists, but I think when it comes to like using assists, you should be all right. I think maybe with no assists, it might become more of a challenge, but I think so far they've done a pretty good job at kind of converting more into a simulator while still keeping the casual fan happy.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's good that they do cater for both, but going forward, I'm interested to see what sort of route they go down going forward as esports grows. And for you, of course, now you're on the wheel and you're building that setup, you're getting used to that wheel. Have you got esports aspirations? I mean, you're only 18 now, so you're still pretty young. I mean, a lot older than a lot in the community, but I mean, is that an aspiration for yourself, or have you got other plans?
I'd love to get into esports, because it looks like great fun. You know, because I speak to Sally and Sonich quite often nowadays, and obviously they're like my friends and all that. So I'd love to be able to get in with them. Surprise or Josh, Simon as well. They were pad users, and I was kind of on their pace. They've switched the wheel and they've done a brilliant job, the pair of them. So I think I could be able to get onto that sort of pace. Obviously, they've put in a lot of time, which all credit to them. I'd love to be able to get into esports because it's something I wanted to do on the last game. I had the chance to qualify through the pro draft, or like to get into the pro draft, but I chose to do a league race instead, which was quite stupid.
Ah.
Because I managed to get in for Baku, and Baku obviously I think proved to be an absolute mess
Yes.
on the stream. So maybe I could have slipped my way through that, or maybe I would have been collected. I don't know. But look, maybe I could have made it to the pro draft, but the way I've been on the wheel at the moment, I probably would have just embarrassed myself.
Yeah, I
But
can imagine. Yeah.
it would have been good fun. I'd like to get. Hopefully, I could get there this season. Would be nice, just as an experience. Meet some of the guys would be fantastic, and I think if I could get in this year, who knows? Because there are some guys that didn't make it this year, like Simon and Evo, for example, and they are absolutely rapid. So you never know. Like I could get picked. You just don't know. It's weird.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was quite surprised some of the draft picks this season.
Yeah, 100%. It was like some of the guys I was quite shocked that got picked, and then others that didn't. Like obviously Evo. And I think now guys like even more so, he's improved quite a lot. I think him, definitely him, JD could do a lot better. Martin might also have a go. Simon and Surprise or Josh. I think Josh was too young to do it, so that's why he couldn't actually get in. So this year, I think he is of age, so he should be able to make it, and he'd smash it 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Josh is stupid quick for how old he is. He's phenomenal. And like you said, there were some questionable draft picks. I mean, I don't really know what Haas were playing at, really. I mean, personally, I'd never heard of those guys. I mean, I think they were PC guys, but you had the whole selection and you picked those guys, and I think a lot of people agree with me. And there were some other choices as well with some of the slots that were given in the in the esports draft. And with people, you mentioned how you haven't really got a rig at the moment. You see a lot of the drivers, they get given the playseat rigs now, and they're costing hundreds of pounds, and then they get sort of the mimic of the F1 wheel. These are really adding up, and we see that a lot of drivers have gone from racing karts to now doing esports. Do you sometimes feel that the esports side of things is maybe starting to build and starting to get a little bit too expensive than we thought it should be?
I definitely thought that esports would be a lot cheaper than the way it's kind of gone like down that route. I thought it would have been a lot easier to get in, but then they went through this whole insane process of doing karting, this whole really weird like track map thing that they did, and it was all for show, really. It's nothing that important. Like realistically, I don't think the teams care if you didn't know where Raskas was at Monaco,
Yeah, definitely.
or like what picture of a curb was. Like I think it was quite silly, but I think it was definitely all for show. And with the play seats, I think it makes sense that the guys like Brendan, Frederick, Rasmussen, I think it makes sense that they'd try and go for something like that, because it's a lot more what they would have at esports, but not everyone has that same opportunity, and I don't think it gives them an advantage, to be honest. Maybe it does. I don't know. I'm very new to the wheels, so maybe a play seat is like an insane experience. But I don't think it's going to be something that is a must. And like, if you don't have a play seat, you're not getting into esports. It's a fact. But like, I think it should be okay. Maybe the quality of drivers might change a little bit through it. I don't know. But like considering AOR, like if you win the top split of any AOR platform, you get a play seat. Maybe it's something. I don't know. Maybe it is a top secret to get to esports. Maybe AOR's hinting at something. I don't know.
Maybe.
I think it should be alright though.
Yeah, it's not too expensive at the moment. It was me. That was me sort of looking maybe towards, either I'm sure you've seen when you have those guys with full sims where the cockpit
Mm.
actually moves around and it's like in midair sort of thing. One of those. I know it
Yeah.
won't get that far because Codemasters couldn't design a game that good to deal with all of
No,
that crap,
not
but
not a hope.
not in a million years they could do that. But
Not a chance.
no, not with Lee Mather at the helm of the Codemasters.
Oh, absolutely not. Dear. I hate to see Lee Mather in like that. Jeez, that's
Mm,
a bit incredible.
yeah, I don't think anybody wants to see
No
that.
one.
No.
Nah.
Um, but we talked about league racing. Is there any sort of moment that you go, God, that was a great moment, or that was the best race I've ever had?
Oh, Jesus. This takes me back now. This does because I've it's been I think nearly 4 5 years at this point, and I've definitely had those races where I was like, bloody hell, that was incredible, or I've pulled off an overtake and I thought I'm gassed over that one.
Hmm.
Definitely like some of the standouts were the ones that weren't like streamed, because obviously like nowadays from F1 2016 onwards, you get a lot more leagues that stream and all that, and especially nowadays with ILR and SRL or anything else. I can't remember any leagues because I don't keep up with that.
Hmm.
But like definitely back in F1 2014, 2015, where probably the community was at its sort of lower point to what it is now. Like it's obviously a lot more. There's obviously a lot more people I think involved,
Hmm.
but definitely like I had some races back on F1 2015. There's a video on my channel from CRL in season 2 Hungary with myself and a driver called Lucky Dog 2000 now, and I think TM Burnout, I think his gamer tag is now.
Mhm.
He's now doing bits in the Project Cars esports scene, which is incredible, really. He's also quite young. Um, there was a race like that. It was insane. I've had races with Cyril Hamilton in the past, also on 2015, that have been amazing. Back on 2014, there's been some drivers that are on around nowadays where I had races with them, and that's kind of like what got me started and wanted me to keep going.
Hmm.
Even like as recent as now, I had a very good wheel-to-wheel battle with Nathan more so.
Hmm.
Like it's in F2, like it's not even F1. Like getting great racing is it's easy as long as the drivers can actually race. As I learned a lap later when driving with someone, which we won't go into. But I think definitely top moments. Anything that involved Cyril Hamilton was usually quite fun. I remember my one and only overtake on the Flying Fin was quality. It was an absolute slipstream fest down Bahrain. I just dive bombed him into the first corner.
Hmm.
I've had some good races with Brendan as well before he got into esports. And these are all moments that just kind of help motivate you to keep going.
Hmm.
And I think if there was one particular moment, I wouldn't say it was a just one moment, but I guess as a race in a whole, definitely AOR F1 last season at Spain, where I started like 17th or something at Spain. It was wet, and I almost got a podium as well.
Hmm.
Something like that is definitely one of my best top moments. It was definitely up there with some of the best moments I've had in league racing.
Hmm. You mentioned a few drivers that we don't really hear about anymore. Why do you think there's such a drop off with drivers? I mean, if you go back 3 or 4 years, there are names that we don't hear about anymore. I mean, why do you think that is? We don't see these guys sort of progress forward. I mean, we do see a couple, yourself, and we see Limitless and Martin still up there, but where's everybody else gone?
I think the game's kind of just they arguably they have got a little bit less enjoyable, which for me is kind of true.
Hmm.
I think for them that could be the case, because you see nowadays on Twitter, like it's like every other week somebody's giving up on league racing,
Mm.
or because like the game isn't enjoyable. There's glitches online. Like if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, multiplayer was definitely a lot more stable. Even back on F1 2013, like the game was way more stable than what it is now, and you had guys like X Massey G, Matthew Gallagher, even
Mm.
Harry Jacks. You still had JD and Martin back then. of course, Harry's still around in esports, although he got picked by Mercedes and didn't do anything for them.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that at all.
No.
JD, he's still obviously around. He's still doing bits whenever he can. Matt's obviously gone into WTF1. I think it also comes down to age. I guess when usually I always thought once I got to about 18, 19, I'd have stopped league racing, but I just enjoy racing way too much to stop. But maybe for them it wasn't like that, because you've got people like JD who's must be like 24, 25 or something, and he's still kicking about in ILR, AOR or whatever. But maybe some people just have different aims in life. Even maybe they don't want to league race the whole time. Maybe they have something else that they aspire to do. There's definitely been people in the past that I've raced with, and I think nowadays they could have done quite good, but then they've gone off and done their own thing, which I think is great for them, because not everyone could have got to what Brendan Lee has done. And I think they definitely could have tried in the past, because I don't think Brendan could have imagined himself being esports champion while he was off winning every other race in season 11 in AOR. Yeah, I think not everyone's path wants to go into F1, which I think is completely fair.
Yeah, everyone. I'm sure some of these guys may have had their heart on going into F1 sort of competitively, but back then that wasn't an option. It's only been the last 2 years we've had F1, an F1 esports scene. Before that it was just league racing for fun. You maybe won the game, or you won a Ferrari hat or something, but it was nowhere near as competitive as it is now. And what I've noticed is the guys that do race in the leagues, in AOR, in your World Online Racing, SRL, IRL, it seems the age has got a lot younger than it used to be. I mean, even I've been watching AOR for 3 years now, and I've been on Twitter for about a year and a half, but I've already seen such a change in the age gaps between what it used to be and what it is now. I mean, I think you mentioned it then, but is it is sort of is league racing a young man's game, or is it maybe the way times are changing, way social media is changing? What do you think it is?
It's a very good question. I've thought about this, but I haven't actually thought about this before and discussed it with others. I think the community as a whole has got a little bit younger. I think if you went back to maybe like F1 2013, guys like Harry Jacks, Matthew, JD Martin, they're all late teens, early 20s. There were no really young guys at the top. Everyone was older, mature, and that was what the community reflected onto Twitter and just social media, YouTube. They were just a lot older. They just obviously back then you would have had Matt having a go at JD for having crappy connection, and that was just sort of how it was back then. I think the community as a whole was just a lot more mature, I think. And then obviously nowadays you've got 12-year-olds kicking around, almost getting into AOR-F1. That's not me firing a shot at anyone. It's just how it is. Obviously, there's a lot more leagues out there as well. I think that it's kind of gone down a little bit maybe on this game. I'm not quite sure, but definitely 2016, 17, there was loads of leagues kicking around with multiple tiers and different variations of driving. And I think, in a way, the community, especially in the last year, has changed quite a lot, because I've been around since F1 2015, on Twitter a lot more, especially, and there's definitely been a massive change from where I would have been in AOR season 11 to where we are now in season 16 now. Jesus, I'm getting old. And there's definitely a massive change in the age, I think, and just the way people go about presenting themselves, I guess, in a way, because now people see it's Twitter, no one cares, they just say what you want, which I guess is fair, but it depends on the way you come across, because especially this year, I think there have been a lot of people that on purposely just act like an idiot just to seem just for likes, retweets, and it's what gets them noticed. Like it happened to me back on F1 2016 when I was off beef with every other driver, but it's because that's what people wanted. It was fun to like kind of watch. But now I think it's a little bit more looked down upon to just act like a fool and just on purposely have a go at people. Some people love it. Some people like to hop on the bandwagon for it.
Mm.
I think now it's kind of died down, but it happens. There will be a spike where everyone's just an idiot, and then it will kind of go down again. Everyone's a little bit more mature because I think especially now, well, as of recording, you never know. Someone could pop off at someone in about half an hour. Right now, I think the community is quite tame. Nobody's really having a go at someone for one specific thing. I don't believe so anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely like a month ago, probably had, well, I guess like a month ago, you had Jack beefing with every other AOR driver, well, not AOR driver, like F1 driver.
Mm.
That's just how it is, I think. It definitely happened before, but I think because the community is a lot bigger and a lot younger, everyone just hops on it quickly and immediately, and they just think they can throw in their 2 cents at every other opportunity when it's before it just wasn't really needed.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think that's the way technology has developed and the way social media has changed with so many young people using, you see kids with iPhones these days and, they've got every single tablet. Do you think that's contributed to why there are so many kids on these platforms now and why they try and jump on the bandwagon and try and get involved with arguments when they shouldn't do? Do you think that's one of the way that technology has developed and it's maybe developed too quickly?
I guess so, because I mean, if I was 12 years old and I had an iPhone 10, I'd be buzzing, I'd be gassed. But like, obviously, we weren't. Back when I was 12, I probably had like a Samsung Galaxy S3 or something, if that was even what it was called, and it was like the worst phone I've ever had. I've only had 2, and that just says it all. I think definitely with the way social media has grown, it's definitely had an impact because. Especially just like with YouTube as a whole, I guess, and Twitch streaming, especially in the last year, has become massive. That's a kid's dream to like get into YouTube. It's handy, really. So they'd come onto Twitter or whatever. But even in the F1 community, they get into Twitter. They're very young, because I guess they get into it through maybe like Araba's career mode or something, tame stuff. They'll pop onto Twitter and then they'll learn about league racing, get involved with that, and then I guess once you get into league racing, it's quite easy to find the group that is quite toxic, and then it's quite easy to get influenced by that. If they have a go at you, you're just like, nah, it's just bite back. I think it's kind of the reason why there's so many arguments, especially before. Technology's definitely had a impact on that because, like you said, you see kids rolling around with iPhones. When I was a kid, I had a board game and I had to go out on my bicycle to have any sort of enjoyment. I didn't have a tablet where I could watch so I could sit there and watch YouTube all day. I guess it's just how times have changed, and that's only like the last 10 years or so, which is incredible. Because technology as a whole is changed drastically, especially from just go back 5 years. It's changed so much. That's definitely a contributing factor, I think, because now parents would see like, oh, this kid has it's the new iPhone. Screw it, we'll get our kid this, whatever, because it's what he wants or something, and they cry in the toy shop just like, Mum, I want an iPhone 10. So I think there's maybe a factor to it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think kids these days are a lot of things are given to them on a silver platter. I mean, like you said, when you were, 12, you were out on your bicycle and you had a rubbish phone. I remember I had a flip phone LG, and the camera. The reason I liked this phone because the camera it was in it directly if you look at a flip-up phone where the fold bit is, the camera you could twist like a little, it was rolled back and forward, so you could take photos. It was one camera, so there wasn't two cameras like phones used to have. One camera which you could take photos forward and backwards, so you could take selfies. So that was,
Incredible.
yeah, I know. It was a LG, and I dropped it from 3 stories high, and it still worked. So
Insane.
that's how phones were built to last back then, but not anymore.
Yeah. You drop a phone from a foot off the ground and it snaps,
Yeah,
pretty much.
exactly. It shows how times change. It's been good and bad. I mean, you said how kids get on social media too early now, and it technology. If you look at medicine, it's grown incredibly well, and it's been beneficial. But then in other senses, like how kids can, you name yourself Steve Davis 23 and you can and say you're born in 1956. You can get on any social media if you want to. It's
Yeah.
There's no filter, not filter, there's no sort of gates to get into these things. Anyone can do it, which is not good, but I mean it's up and down, and it really shows in the F1 community. You mentioned how kids can just find these toxic people. I mean, the problem is, I think kids, they they don't realize any consequences. They're 12,
Mm.
13, and they can say, "Oh, Lewis Hamilton is," I've seen it recently. People have mentioned his color of his skin and the way he was brought up, and these kids are 12, 13. At 12, 13, I wouldn't dare of saying things about someone just because of the color of skin or where they were brought up. But kids these days think it's okay, and I'm really trying to rack my brain around why they think it's okay.
Yeah, 100%. I guess that's also because it's just the way and how easy it is to find. Like even on YouTube, it doesn't take much. It takes a search bar to find like a triggered feminist compilation, and then
Mm,
kids find it's I just make fun of any woman because they must be feminists. They must all be idiots,
mm,
or to find um like a black person saying the N word, and at 12 years old you don't understand what the N word or calling someone the C word, you don't see what the harm is,
mm,
and they'll go off and say all they want. Um, when I was 12, I didn't obviously I knew about these words, but like you wouldn't dare because you knew
mm,
the consequences at the time. You wouldn't dare call a black person the N word, or you wouldn't dare just be rude to other people. Obviously, some people would. That's just how they are. But
mm.
like nowadays, if you're on social media, it's words on the screen. They just say it's easy. It's so simple to just say something to someone, and it could have a massive effect on that person. But when you're online, there is no consequence of that. If you're in person, you could get knocked out. But
Mm,
in online, there's what's the worst you could get? A tweet back. Oh, they might slip into your DMs and call you something. Oh no. It's like
mm.
it's nothing massive that would harm them at all.
Yeah, I think kids, there's no responsibility behind what they say. They say it and they go, "Ah, I'll just fine, lock my phone." Yeah, like you said, you might get a DM, but there's no response. You went to you went up to a group of feminists and said some of these things, you get absolutely ruined by them. Or if
Absolutely.
you went up to someone um who's black or they're Chinese, and you said some of the words that come out you see on Twitter, you get sparked out in an instant.
Yeah.
For me, I don't understand why kids mentally think they can say these sort of things. And I've got a 12-year-old brother now, and he's, like you said, he can go on YouTube and he can search this, he can search that, and it's crazy to think how it's changed so quickly. But for me, it's
Mm.
changing for the bad.
Yeah. 100%. I think obviously the with the rise of technology, it's obviously and even social media, there's been some great things that's come out of it. But then it's very easy to find, especially for a young person, to find the bad things in that.
Mm,
Like just finding like just triggered feminist compilation, finding um, anything that involves being rude or racist,
mm,
or that just triggers someone. It's so simple for a 13-year-old to find something like that, and they find it hilarious because I think we can't lie that sometimes there can be some joy in watching a feminist being an idiot. There can be some joy in that,
yes, they
but
can at times. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like it's just human nature. But then a 13-year-old won't really see. Well, some 13-year-olds might not see the consequence of actually being like that, and then saying these things to an actual feminist or someone that believes in women rights, because maybe they don't, because they won't fully understand it. I think it's just how it. And like the amount of times that I've even been on Twitter before and seen a 13-year-old say the N-word, like it's absolutely ridiculous. Like I would never dare do that when I was 13. Not a chance. But then some people do. So if that's, you won't get very far when you're telling everyone in the world that they're this and that. I mean, if that's how they plan to go about it on social media, then I mean, nothing's really going to go very well for them if they carry that attitude out into the real world.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it will eventually come back to bite them, and I don't think they realise yet. And I, not too. I do sometimes look. You're gonna get shafted here at one point, and I will laugh because I shouldn't say that, but sometimes some people they get to a point where I have sympathy with them to a point. They're 12, 13, but then it gets to a point where they're 15, 16 saying these things, and I go, well, you're old enough now. If you get done for it, whose fault's that? I've told you already. You shouldn't be saying these things, and then they come out with things. So, but we mentioned social media, and I'm sure everyone will be asking who's watching this, who is from the F1 community, about your fellow CRL member Hamilton. And of course we had him on in Series 1, so I've always wanted to get you on board with this series, to just initially, just because you're both, I mean, there was a point where you both were quite vocal on Twitter, not against each other, that was later on, but you both had quite an opinion at times regarding Formula One and the esports scene and the rest of it. But recently you had quite a big argument. I mean, I'd just love to get your perspective from your point of view of the whole thing.
Well, definitely, like, we both had our moments. They've come at quite different points, I think, because my sort of moment on Twitter came like some point in 2017, late 2016, I think, where I just, like, it was what people liked. They liked the fact I was saying some of the, like, it was nothing massively offensive, but they liked that. They liked a good roast, I guess, is the best way to say it. They liked someone, like they liked someone that could have a valid go at someone and they could support that. Because back in 2016, you had loads of people that they were just idiots and they deserved to be called out. And back in 2016, I was that person that would call anyone out on just being a fool, or just being a fool in general. And there's definitely people off the top of my head that I could list that immediately strike to mind that they still are a fool, and I'd call them out on it today. Obviously, I've died down on that because, I mean, I was 16 at the time and now I'm 18. At the time I was 16, he's now 7. So maybe it's kind of just an age thing where you just feel like, I can do this to you, it's fine. So maybe it's something like that, but like, because he's become a lot more vocal definitely in the past 4-5 months, he's definitely, like, before he was nowhere near as vocal, which is actually quite surprising, but now he's everywhere. Wherever you look, there's something from Sir Hamilton. But with our beef, it obviously spikes off at a joke he made about myself, then I guess internet girlfriend is the best way you can put it. And neither of us were very happy about it. I asked Jack kindly to take it down, and he refused to. He refused to do it for about maybe 2 days, and then he saw what he was doing. He took it down. Fair enough. But that's basically where it started. And then he did it again, and he didn't stop just being an idiot. And that's when people were attacking. They were attacking myself. They were attacking said person involved. They were attacking Jack. They were siding with me. They were siding with Jack. And that's kind of how it all became a thing. I never really planned for it to get that far. I would have happily settled it in DMs, and that would have been great. But at the time, he wasn't really a fan of that idea. I would DM him, and he just left it. I've tweeted out about it before, like, make your mind on who's mature at this point if I'm trying to keep it at DMs. but it is what it is. We have talked about it very recently, actually, only a couple of days ago. Once I got my old account back, since I got locked out of this one for whatever reason, I got it back. Me and Jack were still following each other. I slipped him a DM. We bounced off each other, and it was like nothing had changed, which is good. I think we were friends since we both started league racing, and we've had our moment. It happens in friendships. You have your moments where,
Of course.
You argue, you have a disagreement, but you're still like best mates. You'll get back together, and it's calm. It happens. It happens even in normal relationships. You'll have a little bit of fallout, but it's just human nature. You might get back together or whatever. That's kind of how it was with me and Jack, and definitely a couple of others like Restive. He decided at one point, and then I spoke to him, and we settled it. It was, as long as, I guess it's sort of the thing with social media as a whole, because everyone thinks you can't settle anything in DMs. They think it's just best to just flat out abuse them publicly, when all it takes is just a nice, calm DM conversation, and there it is. Because me and Jack, we were not getting along at all, like publicly as well. Like the amount of the subtweets that I was getting, that he was getting from others, is incredible. All it took, a couple of months later, it's calmed down. The pressure's eased off. Nobody's attacking each other. Simple DM conversation. It's sorted. In all fairness, time has changed since the argument in comparison to now, which has maybe helped. I don't know. But I think the beef has definitely been squashed. We've spoken a little bit since it was only a couple of days ago, and I'm still mates with Restive or Cal, and it's like the way we were 6 months ago. Nothing's like it just gone back to normal, which I'm happy about, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You sound like you're happy with the situation, which is great to hear, and it's great that after, like you said, friendships go up and down. It's just like going up a set of mountains. There are good points and bad points in any friendship, be it 2 days old or 200, well, 20 years old. Any friendship can go up and down. And why do you think it was that argument you did have was made public? Why do you think it was because it's not just this argument. I mean, you see a lot of arguments. People seem to put them on the news feeds and not through DMs. Why do you think that is? Do people want recognition for what they're saying? Do they want backing? Why do you think that is?
I think people like a good reaction. I think it's a good, like, for some people, it's good drama. I guess they like to see something on their timeline, because that's especially what it was a couple of years ago. When I was doing it, everyone liked a reaction. They liked seeing people go at it. I guess that sort of mindset didn't sort of change in Jack. For me, it has sort of changed. I don't like seeing beef on my timeline every other day. It wasn't nice. It just wasn't good for the community as a whole. But I guess with our fallout, it was a battle of like friends, sort of, because he thought I was backstabbing him in a sense. I saw it where he was not respecting what I wanted. And I think, again, he was getting, because we're like, I guess if you involved all three, myself, Jack, and the said person that was involved with myself, it was because we've all got big, well, at least I had at that time, a good social media backing, because we all had 500 plus followers. Obviously, on my other account, I had only 100 because I got locked. But like, it's almost like a battle of egos in a sense. Jack had his supporters, myself and a person had ours, and it was almost like who had the better backing, who had the strongest argument. And I guess that's what it is like on Twitter. Like, you have two people that start the argument, and then all of a sudden there could be 30 or 40 people that share an opinion on it. And I think that's kind of how it is. Some people just want a reaction. Some people do it on purpose. Some people, I guess in my sense, I didn't want it to be so public.
Of course.
And I think that's just how it. Some people love the publicity. Some people love just having beef and everyone having a reaction about it, talking about it. They like that little bit of relevancy that they can scrape from the bottom of the bucket.
Mm.
But then others would much rather just settle it in DMs. It's calm. We don't need this to be public. If you want it to be public, you can have some like roasts now and again, like back in the day with just Matt and JD roasting each other about internet, like something so tame about like just an internet connection instead of attacking people's personal lives even.
Yeah, I think back, you mentioned JD and Matt, I think back then things were a lot less personal. I think
Yeah.
now it's completely different with, I think the way social media has changed with how, you got your Instagrams and your Snapchats and, the stories on Instagram and, Facebook and the rest of it. I think people have sort of laid out their life on these platforms now and they sort of want recognition for it.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with it. I post on my Instagram now and again, and I post on Twitter that I'm going on holiday or I've done this in an exam or something like that. But I feel sometimes people portray their whole life on social media and they die for that recognition. They die for a
Attention.
response.
Yeah.
It doesn't click with me. I'm not sure why. For me, I can't get my head around it.
Yeah. Like I was definitely I think again like back in 2016 because this is when I was at my peak. I guess this is when I was at my most relevant.
Mm.
I was a very public person. I always said what was on my mind. I always said what was going on. Even in DMs, I'd easily just say anything that was on my mind. And I think nowadays I'm definitely a bit more private. I think, at least I try to.
Mm.
I try and keep things to myself now, and because realistically, what happens in my private life doesn't it's my private life. It shouldn't matter to the other 500 followers I have,
Of course.
unless it's people I can trust, like especially in the community. They're definitely people I can trust a lot more.
Mm.
And that maybe them I can tell them about if I've got a problem. I can come to them about it or whatever. But definitely back in 2016, it was just like being so public about any issue you had, anything that was like upsetting you. Anyone would just tweet about it, and I can definitely say someone off the top of my head that's especially like that. If there's any sort of problem, if there's anything getting them down, there's immediately a tweet about it. There's an Instagram story about it. There's a Snapchat about it. There's a Facebook post about it,
Mm.
which isn't really necessary, I guess.
Yeah.
That's just maybe just how some people like to portray themselves. Which, if some people like to be like that, they like to spread all their happiness, their problems onto social media. Then all credit to you. If you want to do that, it's fine. But
Mm.
if you're gonna spread all your negative problems or your bad times on social media, expect that to come back and bite you because people are going to use that against you. As fair as that is, it's just true.
Mm.
If you publicly speak about maybe a mental health issue, for example, people will use that against you. As unfair as that is, it's just how it is. It's just that's just the sad reality of it.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen so many accounts of people tweeting about they feel down and the vast majority of people will be supportive, but you do get that one or two idiots that just twist it, and
Yeah.
it really grinds my gears when people come out with stuff like depression isn't real or man up and all these sort of things. Yeah, 5 6 years ago I said that as well. I didn't think mental illness was a thing. I thought, yeah, just we're guys, we're meant to man up. And I think as much as I hate the way social media has changed, it definitely has helped mental health, especially. I mean,
Yeah.
the way the the if you just look at genders, I mean, the highest rate of suicide is in men, and that's you wouldn't have thought that. But the way, I mean, the way your stereotypical bloke is, he's burly, he likes football, he's manly, but that's not the way people are now. And I know mental health is such a big thing now, and I'm glad people do portray, they say, and that's the important thing is don't hold it
Yeah.
up and they come out with it, but it's that one or two people who are just dicks about it, and that does grind my gears a lot. And you try and be public, maybe you're being public because you're worried, because you don't know any other way of doing it. So it's difficult to try and get that balance of not putting everything on there, but not putting too little.
Yeah, but I think it's fair. If you need someone to talk to, then all fairness, maybe it's good to reach out. But I think, especially by now, if you've got a decent following, there's no point saying that you're this and that. You definitely by now have someone that you can talk to about it, and you can vent your frustrations out to them, and they'll listen to you. They won't just turn on you immediately, because you have a problem. I think that's maybe a problem for some people. Once they get to about 500, 600 followers, even they still act like they've got 20 followers. They need to tweet out a problem, and they want people to come to them instead of them going to people that they need to talk to. It's just some people are like that, I guess. And then there's obviously going to be those few people that will exploit that, which is a shame. But again, it's that small majority of people that will do that. And once you ignore them, it's, everyone's happy and all that.
Of course. And, you mentioned that you're a lot more private than you used to be. Going back to, said person you were in a relationship, you both were quite vocal, not well vocal, maybe you were quite public with your relationship. Do you feel that was too much for yourself and that maybe contributed to why you're not together anymore, or there's things that behind the scenes that, of course, you don't have to talk about it, of course. But do you feel that wasn't you sometimes because you were too public at times?
Definitely. I think if I had a choice to go back and change that, then I would definitely just have made it a lot more private. Then 100%. Like now, I think I don't know if it had a factor to it. I think it definitely played a part, some part, because it did affect her in some ways. It affected me a little bit as well, because you have like so many people, especially like since it was Jack, a person I trusted so much. He just quickly like turned his back on me like that, like it was nothing. And to have people like that, it would definitely have an effect. And that was why I kind of wanted to be a bit more private at that time as well. If I had the choice now, I'd have definitely just kept it private. It's no one's business. Everyone's going to have an opinion on something, and not everyone's opinion is a nice one. I would definitely have kept it private. Obviously, it's not the main reason why we're not together now, and I guess looking back at it, it's quite silly. It's not the reason that we got together in the first place, but I think in the context of it all, I can see their reasons behind it, and I can relate to it in a sense now. As to why they thought the way they did, because in a way I kind of think this in a similar way now that I'm not in that relationship, where it would have been nice for people to just told me privately, even, because it goes back to that. If they had just told me privately their reasons or why they don't like it, whatever, that's perfectly fine. But there was no need to publicly bash someone for it, which is what happened. And I think even if I'm a private person, as I am sort of now, said person is very, very vocal. They talk about anything. And I think even if I was a private person about it, they probably would have mentioned it somehow, and somebody would have had to go at me for not talking about it or something. Yeah, I think it was a factor to it. I don't think it was the main one. She had issues to sort out, which is completely fair. So I don't really care at this point. Not that I don't care, I don't mind. That was completely the way I said that.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm now, all the beef I had with others, obviously some of it isn't exactly sorted, because there's some people that I'm not going to list names, but there are some people not even bother just sorting it out with, because they're fools as it is. And obviously, like with Jack, I've sorted it out. With Callum, I've sorted it out. Even with OMG, it's Joe. He took part in some of it. It's all sorted. It's fine now. There's no hard beef about it. Nobody cares at this point, since we definitely kept it a bit more private in the last couple of weeks, and especially up until now. I don't think many people quite realised that we had broken up until yesterday, until I tweeted she mentioned it, and I think it's fair. I think it was, and it stopped people from talking about it, which was what we wanted. I think if we had done that at the start, I think it definitely would have been a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you learn from these things, don't you? And it's you by having these experiences, you sort of know what you want going forward, and as you know, you have your good moments and your bad moments, and it's a difficult one at times to sort of deal with it. And when you've got other people pitching in when they don't have to, and all these sorts, it can be such a difficult thing to deal with. And I mean, it seems you come out the right way, and you come about the way you present yourself now, and the way you've come across in this conversation. It seems you come out better, which is good to hear, and you're not resentful against anyone. I mean, you mentioned there are some people who you've just disregarded completely, but it's good that you're in the mental state that you've just completely disregarded them and not still sort of worrying about them. I mean, that's some people worry about things and it just makes them ill and all sorts. So it's good that you just forgotten about them completely. But let's change the conversation. Let's get back to motorsport. Of course, Formula One is not your only love. You're a big fan of Moto GP as well.
Yes.
Which one takes precedent? Is it Moto GP or does F1 take the top spot in David's watch list?
MotoGP, 100%. I
Really?
think absolutely. I've been brought up in a household or in a family that was diehard MotoGP. Just bikes in general, whether it be World Superbikes, British Superbikes, anything. Because I think the very first memory I have of anything F1 related was, I think it must have been the Chinese Grand Prix. I mean, obviously, but I can't recall what year. And I remember my dad was watching it, and I remember I came downstairs one morning watching it, and I remember he told me just how bad it is, and I know people would immediately roast him for that. And in my head, that stuck with me, just like, oh, F1, it's garbage. Who wants to watch F1? But then obviously I got into it. I love F1 absolutely, but MotoGP, I'd been watching it. I've known about it my whole life with bikes in general. I've been a MotoGP fan. I die hard MotoGP 2009, and I've watched. It must have been almost every single race from like midway through 2009 until now. So I think if there was a clash between F1 and MotoGP, I mean MotoGP would have it's got my heart. It'd have to go. I've got Twitter to inform me about F1. I can live. I think MotoGP 100%. It's got my love.
Yeah, I do like MotoGP. I don't watch it as religiously as you do. I watch highlights more than full races, but it is a bit more exciting than F1, especially this season.
Yeah, this last season gone by was incredible.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the quality of racing, the actual overtakes, which is great to see. We don't see many of those in Formula One. But yes, they've got a completely different dynamic. And I sometimes feel people underestimate how good MotoGP is.
Yeah.
And
I think, especially, I think it only got, obviously, this is coming from me. I've been watching since 2009. I think I can give a very accurate input on this. The racing in the last, I guess, in the last 2 years has been the best it's been in probably in the whole of MotoGP. I sat through at what I thought, I was 11 years old at the time, what I thought was like the best racing I've ever seen. But I've watched some of the races back now and just like, well, this was garbage. And I sat through this because you have those races in F1 where they're absolutely amazing. Baku, in a sense, last year was incredible, but you have loads of those races where nothing happens.
Yes, yeah.
And in MotoGP, it was years of where nothing was happening. It was just one person that would dominate. It was the same, like 4 people winning. And I guess in a way it was like F1, but especially in the last couple of years, you've had way more winners. You've had a lot more youngsters come up. Just to throw names out there, like Mark Marquez, for example, who's doing absolute bits. But a couple of years ago, you didn't have that. You had the youngsters, but it was definitely just so much. It was so dull, in all fairness. And I love MotoGP completely. And the person I supported, die hard, absolutely, was Casey Stoner completely. And the racing was so bad. Like, it was like, as much as I love Casey as a whole, and the era he was brought up in was great and all, the way the races were just so terrible. They just were. You had the odd good race. There's obviously the most, I guess, in MotoGP history was in Catalonia in 2009, where Rossi overtook Lorenzo at the last corner and on a bike, or even in F1, you would see someone overtake at the last corner at Spain. And at the time, that was incredible. It was headline stuff. I think, I don't know. I was 8 at the time. And now you get last lap showdowns. It feels like every other race, which just shows how far the sport has come as a whole. But then you look at it, it's almost gone in an opposite direction, because back in 2010, you had like 3 teams scrapping out for the championship, but now it's, although you have Ferrari that's there, it's still mainly Mercedes. And I feel like they've taken, like, they've swapped places where the racing in F1 used to be quite good. I believe, I didn't watch it back then, but in 2012 I can kind of say the racing was quite decent. But in 2012 in MotoGP it was terrible. Now in MotoGP every race feels like a banger. In F1, especially this year, you had a couple of more good races, but there were definitely those ones where you could have missed it, and it's not like your life was over. Like Canada was awful. I'm a Vettel fan, but dear Lord, that was terrible. That's nothing. No, never again.
I feel F1, it's improving off the track, but on the track, completely the opposite. And I think F1 needs to take a leaf out of MotoGP, out of touring cars, out of world endurance racing. They need to do something to change it. I mean, they're bringing in the new regulations, well, a slight regulation change for next season, which hopefully will improve the racing in a sense, but I don't think we'll see anything big change-wise till the 2021, the changes come in. But yeah, MotoGP is good. I think some people do turn their noses up at MotoGP. It's just bikes and 2 wheels, not 4 wheels. And I wish people would watch it more, because it is an excellent racing format. And I'm sure as time goes on, people will watch it more. But it's it is definitely good watch. And of course, you used to do motocross as well. I mean, do you ever feel you're going to get back into that? I mean, I've seen a few photos of yourself you put on your timeline. I mean, it looks great fun.
Yeah. I grew up, obviously, like in a house with a family that loved bikes. So my dad rides. My brother is doing his license for the bike now, actually. And we always had a dirt bike. We always had one. We had like some really crappy Japanese knockoff 50cc when we were younger, and then we never quite had the money to obviously get into doing it properly. But it was always great fun to do it. I'd love to get back into it. I think I fell out of love for actually doing it, because we couldn't quite do it as often. And when you're younger, you want to do something all the time. You just love doing it. But we never quite had. We were never. But I mean, just to boost my own ego here, when I was on the bike, I was amazing. Apart from when I crashed, that wasn't so fun. But when I was on it, I was rapid. I was the best. It's like, no one can say anything to change my opinion.
Yeah, that's the problem with motorsport. It's so expensive. It doesn't matter if it's bikes, if it's karts, if it's banger racing. It is expensive. I was in a situation when I was a kid. I used to go kart, and like you said, I was pretty quick. I had sponsorships, but it's just it got to a level where you needed a lot of money, like we're talking a couple of 100,000 a year sort of money. And that's the problem with motorsport at the moment. It's too expensive. And like you said, it's my family weren't very rich either, but they, because I was half decent, I had sponsors and I'd help from my grandparents and my uncles. But that's the problem with motorsport at the moment. It's just so expensive, and that's why we're going full loop here back to esports, and that's why you've got so many formula. You got Graham Carroll, you got Kim Bullock-Bassey. I mean, Sally, who used to go race go-karts in Cyprus when he was a kid as well. It shows sort of the how expensive motor racing is at the moment, and that is a bit of a problem. And I'm sure there's so many talent out there. You could have been a world motocross champion if the money was on your side, but that's the problem with the way motorsport has gone, unfortunately. And you mentioned you're from a family um, that loved motorbikes. I mean, were you quite a close knit family? I mean, I've seen a couple of photos of you and your brother on your motorbikes. Were you quite a close duo?
I think probably before myself and my brother were definitely a lot closer. I think now we've hit our teenage years. I
Mm.
think we've kind of separated a little bit. I mean, he's next door to me, but
All right.
we don't talk as much, even though we're in the same house, which is quite sad in a way. We still talk, but
Mm.
like we don't quite do anything together. We're both trying to do our own thing, whatever.
Mm.
But as a family, we're definitely quite close. I think. I don't think we have any massive like family issues. Obviously, every family has a fight now and again,
Mm.
have a disagreement about something, but that's just how families are. I think as a family, we are quite healthy in a way. I'm still privileged to have the life I have. Some people would die to have the sort of life I've had, and it's nothing
Mm.
luxurious. But I've got clothes on my body. I can have a bath when I want. I sleep in a warm bed. I've got food on the table,
Mm.
and I've got a family that love. Not everyone has that, which is a shame. But I even if I wanted to complain about the way my life is, and everyone does now and again.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I have to realize that I'm in a very privileged position, and not everyone has that, which I'm very thankful for.
Of course, there are so many people out there that have got nothing, and I think sometimes people don't realize what they've got, and
Yeah.
only when they really look at themselves and really look into what's around them, they realize what sort of position they're in. And like you said, the fact you've got clothes on your body, food on the table, and you've got a roof to sleep under is a lot more than a lot of people out there. I mean, just go to any. There's so many countries, even in the UK, there are so many people who are in bad positions, and sometimes I feel that people need to open their eyes to it.
Mm.
And you mentioned your brother. I mean, I've got two brothers, and one's 19, and he's a bit of a dick. I'll openly admit that, and call me. He'll say I'm a dick as well. I mean, as you get older, it's a completely different dynamic. But I find now, like I'm 23 now, he's 19. Well, no, he's 20 actually. Um, we've got closer again. So I think
Yeah.
where teenagers go, it's you get the shoppy teenager phase, and we've all been there, even
Yeah.
the girls, if there are any watching. I'm sure there's not, but we all go through that phase, and it's my brother she was next door to me, but I called him all sorts of names under the sun. I won't repeat, but yeah, it's good that you've got a good family dynamic, because some people don't have that. But going, you know, where over the next sort of 5 years, you're 18 now. Where, what does the future hold for you? Where do you want to go in life? What opportunities do you want to grab? And sort of, is it university? Are you doing something completely different?
As of right now,
Mm.
it's kind of been like that for most of my teenage life. I don't really know what I want to do. Some people have their life completely sorted. They know they have their ambitions. They know exactly what they want to do. Right now, I'm still unsure of what I want in the future. I think if I could make esports, if esports was able to become like a living thing, I'd
Hmm.
love that. But maybe I can attempt for that with like esports, whatever. And obviously now I've got a wheel. Maybe that can become a thing. But I think right now I've got no real plans at the moment. I'm sure something will come up, and I'll be able to say this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
As of right now, I don't quite have that. Education wise, I'm on a sort of year break to kind of just relax, explore a little bit, think about what I want to do, because I didn't want to jump into like college or university and end up doing something that I just didn't like doing. I think this is a good chance to just think about what I want to do, to take a little bit out, do some things, and just see what happens.
Reevaluate. That's what
Yeah.
I think that's what I did as well. Took some time out, figured out what I was going to do, and then went forward with that. And you know, I mean, as time goes on, you've got every single chance to get to live that F1 dream, because there's going to be more and more opportunities in the world of motorsport gaming. So I mean, maybe the longer you leave it, the more chance you'll have. So we'll have to wait and see. But I always like to ask two questions at the end of any series. Thank you to those who did put Twitter questions in. I have mentioned them throughout the episode. So thank you everybody who did comment. I'm sure you know who you are. But final two questions. If you looked back sort of 5, maybe 10 years ago, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Jesus, if I was to go back 10 years, I was 8 years old. Bloody hell.
five,
How time
5 years then.
how time has flown out.
I know, it's gone way too quickly.
5 years ago, I definitely would just tell myself to just have a lot more fun. I think I did take things a little bit too seriously, especially like even on going through on Twitter. I definitely took things way too serious, and now I'm just more of a joke. I don't care. I definitely tell myself just to relax a little bit, enjoy the things that you have joy in, and just relax a lot more, because I definitely got stressed out over things. And like, this was 5 years ago at school. Like nothing is stressful. Reach university, and then you know what stress is.
Yeah.
I definitely just told myself to relax. Everything will be fine. Yeah, just in general, relax. Know like what you're doing. Understand everything that's going on around you, and in general, just have a bit more fun, I guess.
And sorry, I completely forgot what I was going to ask you. Oh, that's it. So finally, what do you want to be remembered for in life?
I think of the dream scenario, right? I've lived a full life. I've had a family. I've lived a nice, happy life. I'd like to overall just be remembered for just being a nice person, someone that anyone could talk to, an approachable person, I guess, and overall that somebody that everyone was able to get along with. Obviously, there's people that you just can't get along with, but I'd like to think that I'd like to be known as anyone could be friends with. I don't want to just be seen as this out of touch character. Yeah, I'd like to just be seen as someone that was kind, and someone that just a friendly person in general. I wouldn't like just an asshole. Excuse my language, but I wouldn't. Nobody wants to be known as that.
No.
Yeah, I think I'd be happy with something.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you ever so much for joining me this evening. We've had a long chat, longer than expected.
Very long time.
Yeah, but I'm sure everyone involved has appreciated you staying with me this whole time.
CPM is going to help you out here.
Yeah, loads of ads. Yeah, Christmas time, I'm going to get loads of money out of this.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. Thank you everybody who has watched all the way to the end. Hopefully you have enjoyed this chat with CRL Rosberg. It's been a really good chat this evening. If you have any questions for him that we didn't get to ask this evening, I'm sure he can answer you in the comment section down below. If you've got any concerns, of course, about what we talked about, I'm sure you can message myself or David on Twitter. Both our DMs are open to anything that we did talk about this evening. If you want to follow David, his Twitter and YouTube is down below, which you can follow him down there. Thank you ever so much, guys. Hopefully you have a good Christmas, and we will see you in the new year, 2019, for another episode of Beyond the Visor. Thank you very much, and good night.